Today we're going to talk about the principles of art. And if you remember a few weeks ago, we did the elements of art. And you can kind of think about it like this. The elements of art are the tools that you need to create your artwork, and the principles of art is the directions on how to use those tools to create your art. Or you can even think about it like this. Imagine you're going to bake a cake. You can think about the elements of art being the ingredients to make your cake or your artwork, and the principles of art is the recipe to make your cake or the recipe to make your artwork. So the principles of art are pattern, emphasis, unity, balance, contrast, rhythm and movement, proportion, and variety. Now, sometimes if you look it up in Google, principles of art, you may or may not see variety, and you may or may not see proportion, and you may or may not see contrast. So sometimes there's differing thoughts, but I think all of these are equally as important. So let's begin and let's make our principles of art chart. So I am going to show you on this sketchbook. Some of you might have a sketchbook with a spiral on the side, and that's okay. And maybe you're doing it on a regular piece of paper. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create my sections. So I want to divide my paper. So I'm going to take my paper and I'm just going to fold it in half. And then I'm going to follow that line that I just made, that crease. And I could do it with a ruler, or I could just do it by sight. And I'm going to mark my line right down the center. Always draw light until you get it right. I'm going to draw a little bit darker so you can see it on the video. And now I need to make my 4 sections on top and my 4 sections on the bottom. So the easiest way to do that is to find the center. And I know that this paper is 11 inches, so I'm going to make my mark at 5.5 inches, or you can just put your finger where you think the center is. And I am going to take my ruler, and I'm going to put my pencil right on the center line, and I am going to go all the way to the corner, and I'm going to do the same thing on each side. Okay, and once we have our 8 sections, we can begin writing the title of each principle of design. So right in the center, oh, I need to have my line right down the middle across my horizontal line. I almost forgot that one. Okay, so right in the center, I'm going to write the principles of art. So I'm definitely going to have to erase some of these lines. So right in the center, I am going to write principles. And I'm going to do it in block letters. You can do it in bubble letters, principles of art. Now you may also see it where it says principles of design, but we are going to write principles of art, and you can do a little wavy line or a little bubbly line, maybe a little cloud around the title of your chart, and then you can begin. So here would be variety. And variety, boys and girls, is an assortment of the elements of art. Variety. So it's having a combination of different things, line, shape, color, without any patterns. So you can just make up your own, just random. There really is no sense of pattern or focus. Variety can really be different sizes, different shapes, whatever you really want it to be. The next one is going to be pattern, and this is one we all know, pattern. So pattern is any shape, line, or color that is repeated. So you can do a heart, a circle, a triangle, and you have to repeat it. A heart, a circle, and a triangle. And maybe in the second row, you're repeating lines. So I'm just going to do spiral lines. So again, pattern is any line, shape, or color that gets repeated. And sometimes it's just the same thing over and over. Okay? The next one is emphasis. And emphasis, you want to think about it as, what do you want your main idea to be? What do you want to focus on in your picture? That would be your emphasis. So maybe it's the most important thing that you want to draw about, or something you want to say. So in this case, what I drew was a bunch of buildings. They were all tall buildings, but one in particular had some special patterns and designs on it. So I'm just making my buildings look a little more 3D. So I'm taking them from a shape to a form, and we learned that with the elements of art chart. So all my buildings look pretty similar, but to this one in the center, I'm going to give it some fancy details because I really want to emphasize this building. So I'm going to add details to it, and when I color it, just like I did here, I'm going to make it super colorful and leave the other ones sort of plain, because I really want this to be the focus, the main idea. So I am emphasizing that building there. Okay, and now we move on to unity. Unity. And when you think of unity, you think of how the elements work together, so they fit together, so the artwork looks a little bit more complete. So just like I showed here, I had a bunch of just shapes floating around on this paper, but none of them were really making any sense with each other. So what I did is I took almost like a string, something that would unify them, connect them in a way that would make this drawing look a little bit more complete. Even though all the patterns were different, just by taking this line and connecting these patterns, somehow they are more unified and the artwork looks more complete. Okay, now we're going to move on to balance. Balance is one you probably already know. Balance can be many different ways. So when we think of balance, we think of things being the same on both sides, the same weight, the same shape. But balance can be both symmetrical, which is the same on both sides, or it could be asymmetrical, which would be different on both sides, or it can even be radial, meaning it's a circular design that works its way out. So if I'm going to make it symmetrical, I want it to be the same on both sides. So whatever I do on this side, I'm going to do on this side. If I draw a curved line here, I'm going to draw a curved line here. If I do a zigzag or a wavy line here, I'm going to do a wavy line here. And maybe another curve here and another one here, but we can't really see it. Right now it is symmetrical because it's the same on both sides. But if I wanted to make it asymmetrical, maybe I would add more things on this side, and I would not do it to the other side. So now it's asymmetrical. They are not the same on both sides. Okay? Now the next one is contrast. And this one really makes a difference in your artwork when you show contrast. So contrast is when you put things that are very different together. So maybe that's color, putting black next to white. Or in this case, I did all these apples in green and I made one in red. Or maybe I can do all apples, so they're all the same, but I want to contrast one shape. So maybe one shape, instead of it being an apple, I'm going to make it a star, okay? And when I color it, I would also make sure I use contrasting colors, okay? So contrast is when you take different things and you put them together. Rhythm and movement. Rhythm, when you think of rhythm, you think of music, right? And when you have a rhythm in music, you have something that goes well together. And when you think of movement, you think of things in motion. So there are things that we can do in art to show both rhythm and movement in our work. So it could be a repetition of things to create a sense of motion. So what that does for a work of art is it helps the person viewing your art, it helps their eyes move around the picture. So in this case, what I did is I made trees, but I made all the trees go in one direction, making it look like it was a really windy day and all the trees were blowing in the wind. But I took it a step further by creating wavy lines throughout my picture to show more rhythm and more movement, to make it look like there's wind and the wind is going in this direction, okay? And the last one is proportion. Okay, so proportion is the relationship of size or the placement of things in relation to one another. So over here, what I did is I did one really big palm tree, and its relation to this palm tree is that this one's really bigger and closer, and this one is a lot smaller and farther away. So I'm going to do a big palm tree, and I'm going to do this one a little bit different. This one is much closer. And then I'm going to do a horizon line back here. And this one is going to be much smaller. So the proportion is how this big one is in relation to this small one. And there you have the principles of art: variety, pattern, emphasis, unity, balance, contrast, rhythm and movement, and proportion.